How many of you here are looking for a miracle? Perhaps wishing and wondering, longing for some kind of guarantee for tomorrow, something to hang on to for today. Last week, we got to hear all of these stories of modern day miracles, these remarkable stories of goodness that we attribute to an active and loving God. Everyday stories, extraordinary stories. And each person insisted God was in the midst of what they uncovered, discovered, or experienced. Each person could say that they felt seen by God, that they felt noticed and cared for as though they mattered. No one sensed they were overlooked. And those stories are precisely what we need to make us courageous. Courageous enough to believe, courageous enough to stand firm, courageous enough to expect. But that is sometimes easier said than done. That type of courage emerges out of a lack of bad experiences or just the right amount of redemptive moments. That type of courage is often forged in fire and declared loudest by those who have found themselves on the other side. On the other side of sorrow, on the other side of terror, on the other side of loss, on the other side of deep sadness and of disappointment. And for some of us, the other side seems impossible. We may experience God with us. We may encounter flickers and moments of joy. We might even hold fast to hope despite all that is hopeless, but we don't expect a miracle. Some kind of push that gets us to the other side of our situation. And for some, it's the very realization that we cannot see to the other side and may never find our way from where we are to where we want to be that leaves us feeling as though we are the overlooked ones. God was busy with them, with others, with those over there, but not with us. No, God has left us unseen. God has left us unfound. God has left us, and we have neither the courage nor the expectation that we will see God active, alive, and moving in our situation. If you read Matthew chapter 1, you'll find yourselves in the midst of a series of names. Those that the author attributes to the genealogy and history of Jesus. And the list is full of these heavy hitters, the who's who of Israel's history. There's Abraham and David. There's Solomon and Hezekiah. Names that meant something. Names that defined a people's history. There's the one called the father of the nation, the one who conquered nations to make their own great, the one who built the temple, the one known for leading the people back to God. There are names that you would want in your line of ancestors. They're the names that you want to be a part of announcing the Messiah, the anointed king, the one sent from God to save the people. These are the names of the winners. In fact, it is the very names that are at times in our modern rhetoric the ones that we call heroes of the Bible. Those whose experiences with God led them to be courageous. From Abraham's divine encounters that insisted he would be the father of a nation, the father of a son despite his elderly age, to the young shepherd boy made king who leads the people to be their most powerful, to Hezekiah, the king known for ushering in great change. Each of them had encountered God in remarkable ways that bolstered their faith. No one could say that any of them sensed they were overlooked. But squeezed in between the loud and the powerful, the traditional heroes in that list of names are the story of 4 women, the unexpected ones. There's Tamar and Rahab, Ruth and Bathsheba. They are not highlighted as ones that heard from God, that conquered. They're not the ones who we call the religious heroes or the temple builders. They are not the ones that we call the heroes of our faith. Their stories are more or less considered important because of those who surround them, Judah and David, Joshua and Boaz. And while they are easily overlooked by us as simply because they are women, but it is also because of the types of women they are. Their names would have been unexpected additions to this proclamation of the Messiah. These 4 women are the scandalous ones. They're the foreigners, they're the powerless. They're the betrayed and the maligned. They are the wholly unexpected ones, yet their stories are here in the list of those whose names would mark the ancestry of Jesus. And so we begin with Tamar, the daughter-in-law of Judah. Her story is one that is deeply connected and intertwined with grief. Her first husband dies, and then her second husband dies. They're brothers. And so Judah is leery and wary and fearful of allowing her to marry his last-born son, even though that would be the common tradition. Her sorrow would have been coupled with the demise of her situation, as Judah doesn't simply release her to marry into another family, but entraps her and keeps her hidden away, childless, noted as one that in whose presence husbands die. Her whole life is left in limbo. Her shame is what carries her, but it will be her shrewdness that saves her. Now, her methodology isn't one that I recommend or support, and that's why you have to be very careful. I keep saying this week about saying you're Bible-centered, because this story isn't one you want to follow. So she's full of deception, and she does what women around the globe insist on: survival. The way to her freedom is to give birth in her family line. And so she tricks her father-in-law, and you can read between the lines, and 9 months later she introduces him to her twin sons. And she says, "These children are yours." She may have imagined that God could not see her. She may have thought that society had abandoned her, that her future was hopeless, and so in her powerlessness, she finds a way towards redemption. A sinister, a deceptive, a heartbreaking way towards redemption, to take back all that had been taken from her. Yet her story rises as one to be noted in the proclamation that the Messiah has come. Then there's Rahab. Rahab is a sex worker. She's a foreigner with foreign gods, with foreign ways of being, foreign practices in her foreign land. And she begins as one who is easily missed and overlooked and easy to malign. Yet when the spies were sent to conquer her land, they find their way into her home, hiding from danger, and she chooses to participate in their salvation, even though they are both strangers and enemies of her people. Now, lore suggests that she is saved on that day because she helped and participated in the destruction of her own people, and her salvation is a reward for her protection. But this salvation that she offers comes at a great cost. She is included because of those that she abandoned. And in return, generations of those like her will be considered outcasts. Those who follow in her line will be the proverbial other, the ones who simply don't belong, regardless of what they do. Yet her story, the outsider, becomes a voice in the proclamation that the Messiah has come. And then there's Ruth. She is also a foreigner, a Moabite who is married to an Israelite. And when her husband dies, she is widowed alongside her widowed mother-in-law. And they know that to be a widow is to be vulnerable. It's to face poverty, to be isolated, to live life threatened. And so they take the risk to go back to the land where her mother-in-law comes from, and they take the risk to go back to the place that may insist that this is not a home for Ruth. And you can imagine as they journey back to Naomi's home all the ways that hope is dim. Their situation declares that they are precisely the ones to be missed, that they are the ones to be forgotten, that they are the ones to be overlooked. That is until Naomi, her mother-in-law, recalls the one way that they can be made whole. And it requires Naomi to get married again, an unlikely next step. So she takes a risk. And she seeks to have her daughter-in-law take her place. And she seeks marriage with one of her kinsmen, Boaz. And through a series of events, Ruth finds herself asleep at Boaz's feet, a forward and unusual posture to take, one that risks her demise while giving her opportunity to hope. And Boaz complies, and she is redeemed. She's made whole and cared for, saved from poverty, brought from the edges, brought from being forgotten, and no longer in danger. Another foreigner, nearly forgotten, nearly overlooked, yet one of the stories that proclaims the Messiah has come. And then there's Bathsheba. She's often more well known. A woman who is the victim of circumstances, the victim of power, the victim of powerlessness. She will become one of the wives of David after he forcefully takes her as his own, murders her husband as a means to erase the problems that he has created. And the cost for Bathsheba is the loss of her husband, the death of her first child, the fear that comes when you know what is possible when you do not comply. Later, she'll have a second child. She will fight for her son to be king, which seems a small price to pay for all that has been taken from her at the hand of King David. A family splintered, a life taken, and a life lost. A woman in her grieving wishes she could go back to when she was unseen. Yet even this story of the powerful overtaking the powerless, a life altered, a reputation in tatters, a heart that is grieving, the name of a king brought from the heavens to the floor, even here in this story, the Messiah is proclaimed. And while each of these women don't seem to belong in this line of God coming in human flesh, each story reminds us of the waiting, and it reminds us of Advent. And so it is that Matthew's genealogy becomes Advent personified, as we are reminded of all that they were waiting for and how it is all that we are waiting for. A miracle. A miracle that can only be appreciated by those who are scandalous, by those who are outsiders, by those who are vulnerable and mistreated, by those who do not belong, those who are grieving and those who are lost, those who are losing and those who are the unexpected ones. Those who have not yet found themselves on the other side of sorrow and terror, of loss and sadness. Those who sit in the middle and wait for the Messiah to arrive with great fear and trembling. Everything that makes us the unexpected ones. That is everything that makes us the unlikely ones to participate in the proclamation that the Messiah is coming, that the Messiah has come. Those are all of the reasons that the Messiah is here, to make all things new. The miracle for those who are abandoned, their future hopeless, who seek redemption that does not cause them to take from another just to ensure there is enough, is that all is not well, but all will be made new. The miracle for those who are outcasts, the ones who we call the other and the outsider, is that they find belonging that does not require them to exclude in order to find their new home. Sorry. They come to understand the beautiful work of knowing that all is not well, but all will be made new. The miracle for those who are vulnerable and unsure of how they will survive and how they will take another step and how they will move into one more day, as they come to discover that even they can find shelter under the shadow of the Most High God. Even they can be made whole despite all that seems to want to break them into a million pieces, is that all is not well, but all will be made new. The miracle that those who have experienced great loss in the most unfair situations at the hand of those things that don't seem to understand what has been torn from our hands, those who mourn and those who grieve, those who walk in the shadow of death, those who hear the whisper that God is present even when it seems that God is silent, the miracle rises and dares to whisper, all is not well, but all will be made new. The miracle within the miracle is that the God of the unexpected invites us to be the expectant ones, thank you, who somehow manage to live in all that is broken, all that is marred, all that is the rough and the roughed edged and that which is cutting, with the simple hope that Tamar and Rahab and Ruth and Bathsheba could only imagine. Miracle upon miracle is that life emerges, and life will emerge from the most unlikely spaces. It's here among the unexpected that we learn to be expectant, to watch and to wait, and to live with this deep knowledge that if all things will be made new, if all things will be made as they were intended in the beginning, if wholeness is possible, we require a God of miracles. A simple glance around us and within us and among us confirms that this is true. We need a God of miracles, especially when we cannot see our way to the other side. And it is there when we cannot see, when we cannot imagine, when we cannot find our way through, that we discover that we are the unexpected ones. We are those who are unexpected and yet we wait. We are those who are unexpected to proclaim that the Messiah is coming and the Messiah has come, that God dwells among us, because everything we can see and all that we have seen should disqualify us. It should halt our faith and it should dull our capacity to still believe in miracles, yet here we are. Yet here we stand on this Sunday morning in the midst of Advent, in the season of waiting, as those who expect. Expectant with tears in our eyes, expectant with hope that rises and falls, expectant even when we are unsettled right down to our bones, expectant even though we are exhausted, expectant even though we are afraid, expectant even though we have not yet found ourselves on the other side of our terror and our sorrow, our loss and our sadness. Even here, we are the expectant ones who wait alongside Tamar and Rahab and Ruth and Bathsheba for the whisper of a miracle, for the voice of the God who came as one of us, as they declare, all is not as it should be, but all will be made new. Ask the worship team to come up.